Welcome back, NoDQ Galaxy, to a brand new edition of the NoDQ Review, number 179. And I am the moderator, Virtue, joined by this week's elite panel of the NoDQ Review. Of course, Jargo is back, Aaron Rift is here, Nico is here, and Son is here. And gentlemen, we got a loaded panel with loaded topics. What's going on? Nico, I'll start with you. You haven't been on for a while, man. What's up? How you been doing?
What's up, guys? It's great to be back. Thank you for having me back. It's been a few months. Been working and trying to do my thing in life, but happy to be back. Especially be a part of this very big special episode that we have planned for you guys tonight. So thanks for having me back.
Gonna be fun, and hopefully we'll be out of here before 9:30. Son, what's going on, man?
Glad to be here to pay tribute to an all-time legend in Scott Hall, and the big topic is the main event we're talking, my all-time favorite, Stone Cold, ready to bring the enthusiasm.
Oh yeah, and for people waiting for the main event, it's going to be how much does Stone Cold Steve Austin mean to the history of WrestleMania and what exactly might go down during the KO show. All right, Jargo, welcome back. In the midst of packing up and getting ready to move, you still find time to be on the review.
Hey yo, I can't believe nobody took the hey yo. Really, they had to go all the way through like 4 people to get the hey yo. Yeah, shout out to the chat, Michael Wayne. He got the first hey yo in. Thanks for having me, guys. We are tearing apart the 203 and getting ready to move to the Yucatan studios. Good stuff going on. Good stuff. We're excited. Thanks for having me.
We got some big topics here. Some not so much, but we need filler content here on the review, such as some AEW. Anyway, Aaron Riff, what's up?
I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to this panel. I'm looking forward to the topics. Great to have Nico back with us this week. It's been a while. And happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. You can see I'm in the spirit tonight for St. Patrick's Day. I'm ready to get going with this discussion. Thankfully, we're virtual, so nobody's getting pinched, but we're ready to talk some wrestling. So let's do it.
Well, let's start. And we're going to start with, of course, the passing of Scott Hall. For everybody that knows, he fell, broke his hip, and had some surgery. I didn't know he was 63 years old. I thought he was still in his 50s. Like when I was reading all that, I was a little shocked by that. But and he had some complications that ultimately led to him passing away. So, like, the best thing I can think of here is let's just go around and share Scott Hall memories, at least to us when we were fans growing up. And I told Jargo earlier on Vito's channel, like, it was that Razor Ramon early vignettes that hit me that I was like, wow, this guy's cool. Who is this? And I was a big Scarface fan. So, like, I liked Scott Hall from the get-go, WWE. But little did I know at the time as a kid, he had this, AWA. He was huge there. So, Nico, I'll start with you. Remembering the bad guy, Scott Hall.
Yes, thank you. This is going to be a little emotional for me. I'm going to, try to hold it in just because I did know Scott through signings and I got to interact with him a lot. I'm not going to say that I knew him personally because I didn't, but just through signings and appearances, Scott was always good to me and super cool. And when I talk to you about the knowledge of the ins and outs of the wrestling business, Scott Hall has got to be one of the smartest men ever in the pro wrestling business. If it wasn't for Scott Hall, a lot of the boys and girls, and Kevin Nash, let me not forget Big Uncle Kev real quick. If it wasn't for what Scott Hall and Kevin Nash did in 1996, a lot of the boys and girls today wouldn't have those big, fat, guaranteed money contracts. Obviously, some wrestling companies found little loopholes on how to get out of those, unfortunately. But if it wasn't for Scott and Kevin, a lot of the boys and girls right now wouldn't be getting paid the money that they are getting paid. So that, to me, is what I think is Scott's ultimate impact on what he leaves behind for the wrestling business. Now, stories and memories, as you can see, a lot of my pictures with Scott. One thing that I learned from him is no matter what you are doing in the wrestling business, always put yourself in a position to move forward. and always get your shit in. I hope I can say that without getting into trouble.
That's fine.
But I think those lessons can not only be applied for the wrestling business, but also applied in everyday life, no matter what type of business you're in. Always find yourself in a position to be moving forward, to be moving ahead of, moving up the ladder, so to speak, and always get your stuff in so everybody knows, okay, I remember this guy doing whatever it is you're doing. So those are lessons in life that I'll always cherish, and memories that I always cherish. That headlock that he got me in there in the first picture, he did apply pressure and made me sell for him. I did, and he's like, all right, kid, now I can trust you. So that to me is a special moment and a memory I had. One quick thing, and I did not know this till I was much older. Being a Latino, I legit thought Scott Hall was Hispanic because of the Razor Ramon gimmick. I had no idea until I got older. Oh, he was playing a character. He's some, Caucasian white dude from Florida.
He's like honorary Latino at this point, right?
Right. But I literally had I knew it was a play on of Scarface, Tony Montana, okay. But I legitimately thought when I'm first seeing Razor as a kid, oh, cool, he's Hispanic, he's getting a push, he's doing amazing things like the ladder match at WrestleMania 10, and then SummerSlam 94 in the rematch with Shawn. Honestly, if you think about it, personally, from 1994 to 1990 to early 98, I would argue Razor Ramon Scott Hall was probably the best overall performer in the industry. If you look at everything that he had his hand in, whether it's the stuff with Shawn, the jumping ship from WWF to WCW, the formation of teasing the NWO, and then the formation of it, and then everything that happened with the NWO leading to Starrcade 97, and then everything with helping ending Goldberg's streak at the end of 98. I would say that time period, like 94 to 98, maybe even into 99, Scott Hall is probably the best overall performer of the industry. If you think
that was the best use of a cattle prod in wrestling ever.
Hey, and I was the biggest Goldberg fan back then, and I was like, what a way for that streak to end. But if you think about it now, it's like, wow.
If they would have just not done the finger poke of Doom and let Nash run with the title there. All right, son, I'm going to come over to you. And when I think of Scott Hall, he did some controversial program with Goldust before the Attitude Era even began. The whole, bad guy thing, but being cool. You know how heels became cool? That was Scott Hall. Now I know Razor Ramon was a heel first and he became a babyface, but when he went to the WCW, he was the epitome of heels could be cool, and he really was one of those guys that really defined the gray area for fans. Now, what are some of your memories of Scott Hall?
Man, I think I told you guys earlier, right there, Coliseum home video. This is old school. This was the WWE network before there was a network. Yep. Oh, man, so many great memories on this. I started watching wrestling back in 1994. My brother got me into it. So Scott Hall, being a New Generation era kid, basically, Scott Hall was in that first crop of pro wrestlers I ever saw. My brother, I still remember him basically banging his head to the music. He's like, look at this, Razor Ramon, and just the awesome entrance when he come out sliding and they do that thing, and the Razor's Edge. Just there was so much cool charisma about him that when you look back on wrestling, you're like, that is exactly what you want to see in professional wrestlers, that charisma, that character that grabs you. When you think about him going to WCW, look at what it changed, the chain, what is it? I don't know if it's like the ripple effect or the chainsaw. Excuse me, I got something in my eyes, but I'm going to keep going through this speech.
Let's hear.
But
it's okay.
I was going to say with this, what was it? It was like when he did that that whole thing where he came in on WCW and he's like, you know who I am? but you don't know why I'm here. That started him. Him and Kevin Nash, as Nico pointed out, him and Kevin Nash taking, betting on themselves, coming to WCW, creating an edgier product, bringing Hulk Hogan over to the dark side, creating the NWO, handing WWE's butt to them, making them go like, we got to get more edgier. Enter the Attitude Era, DX, NWO, the Monday Night Wars. Think about... Exactly, right there. Yes, how much influence Scott Hall had on the business to where we are today. Who knows what wrestling would have been like had Scott Hall and Nash not gone ahead and taken that bet. So I am forever grateful for everything that Scott Hall did for professional wrestling. And I didn't know him on a personal level, and I never got to meet him, unfortunately. But when you look at the struggles Scott Hall had, and for him to overcome that, I hope that's a great strength for a lot of people. Everyone, if you are going through abuse, substance, alcoholism, anything, if you could see if Scott Hall can push on through and make it to overcome that, then we can do that in life too. Just like Nico was saying, if Scott Hall can take a bet on himself in the professional wrestling industry, we can all do that in our own lives. It is so awesome that we got to, because at times it felt like we weren't going to see it, but we got to see him go into the Hall of Fame, not once, but twice. And that was awesome. And you hear all the outpour that everyone's given to him. He truly gave back to the business with so many wrestlers coming out. Man, I'm forever thankful. God rest his soul. Thank you for all the memories, Scott Hall. May his soul forever rest in heaven. And for his family, friends, Kevin Nash, the Clique, those who knew him personally, may his memories keep you all strong, as I know his memories for us wrestling fans will keep us strong. So one more for the bad guy.
In that Hall of Fame, like what he said in closing, that was this classic.
I got it right here to quote: hard work pays off, dreams come true, bad times don't last, but bad guys do. I will.
And I remember that. God, it didn't seem like it was that long ago. That was WrestleMania 30. Jargo, is it just me? I've mentioned this. WrestleMania 30 weekend, wasn't that?
Wow, it does not feel like it's been almost.
Am I correct on that, guys?
I think
Jargo,
so.
I said this on Twitter. I don't remember a wrestler ever that made love to the hard cam as well as Scott Hall did. Like, is that just me because he passed away and I'm going online looking at all these things? Or is he legitimately one of the best guys in that ring, knowing when that hard cam is on him?
Yeah, I mean, he had that down to an absolute science, right? I mean, and we're going to talk about Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker a little bit later. And we talked about it on Vito's show, where I felt like the match was just kind of a series of spots. But what makes wrestling so great is the things in between the moves. And Scott Hall was the absolute master of what you do in between the moves. The personality along with the in-ring style was incredible, but his business acumen and what he did for the professional wrestling business, I think, is ultimately going to be his legacy, because when you look at his booking as a singles talent inside of the WWF, inside of WCW, inside of WWE, he was used more as a tag team wrestler or a mid-card champion. He never really got that big main event push that we all kind of thought that he would get. But the reality was Scott Hall didn't need it, because Scott Hall was over. Scott Hall could get over in a loss better than anybody I think I've ever seen. I mean, we saw that with Kid, right? I mean, he got Sean Waltman over in one night without any kind of question.
Yep. And like I pointed out before, he did it later on with
Hiroshi Tanahashi
in Japan.
Over in Japan. Absolutely. But I think the way that Scott worked with talent and the way that he would put together matches, I don't think he gets the respect that he should as far as his wrestling mind. And I think when you look at all of the clicks, Scott was probably the smartest. I mean, even when it comes to like Sting, he's the guy that went and saw the Crow and was like, hey, I think you should do it like this. And without that, we never get that great iconic character that we know as the Crow Sting. Yeah. And just the influence that he had on the business. I mean, even going back, Vern Gagne wanted him to be the next Hulk Hogan in the AWA. When Vince stole Hogan away and Hulkamania off to New York, Scott Hall was that next guy. He wasn't ready for that spot. And I think people always kind of held that against him as a main eventer, but all Scott Hall did was get himself over. If the new generation of talent knew how to get themselves over like Scott Hall did, if they'd actually pay attention to what Scott Hall did, not necessarily in what he said or what he did in the ring, all the stuff in between, Scott Hall might have been the greatest ever at the stuff in between.
Yeah, and when he got hit with the drink and he locked on that hard camera, that dude
uses it to slick back his hair. I mean, the epitome of cool.
He got into every audience member at home's soul with that, like, I'm cool no matter what's thrown at me.
And I mean, look at the dude. He's built like a brick shit house. He's like 6'10", and somehow he's still playing a chicken shit heel. I mean, you know, like it was just absolutely insane. And the facial expressions, the little waving of the fingers, everything about, he was perfect. It was the stuff in between the moves. And that's what's been lost on the current generation.
Yeah, wiped his feet on the mat before he walked in. And look, the fake Razor, Scott Hall made it so easy for him to get all those mannerisms, to even though that was a joke, dude, again, that would have never been able to happen if it wasn't for Scott Hall. Like, if that, who was the guy that played the fake Razor? Like, if he came in as Razor Ramon and not Scott Hall, it would have failed.
Yeah.
It would have absolutely failed. All right, over to you, Aaron, because I know some super chats came in.
Yeah, you guys all summed it up really nicely. Not much else to add to it. You guys really, really spoke well of him, and I'm not sure how I can even follow that. So I'll go ahead and get to the super chats here and then maybe add a few more comments on it. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat, says The Rock's segment with the NWO was the funniest thing ever. Yeah, that was a great segment. And responding to Tom,
I remember The Rock's mannerisms.
Yeah. I felt so bad because it was like The Rock was crapping on them because they just came back. I was like, why?
Hey, nobody was safe from The Rock in the Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression. 6-man Armageddon Hell in a Cell promo. Didn't matter how big you weren't safe from The Rock.
Right. You were gonna get some of The Rock's smackdown verbally and physically, for that matter. Walter Cruz sent in a $10 super chat. Thank you, Walter. He says, like I said before, Razor had one of the best themes ever, the best non-lyrical at least, and his Razor's Edge was so protected. I watched hours of him on Peacock and nobody kicked out of it. I will miss him. Yeah, that's very true. And I feel like he would have been world champion if he did not have his personal issues. I think that he definitely would have been at the very top. He got close, but not quite there. And unfortunately, his personal issues held him back a little bit. We talked about this years ago. Jeff and I did a video about wrestlers that never really reached their highest potential, and Scott Hall was at the top of the list. Him and Jake Roberts, two guys that if they didn't have their problems, they probably would have been top level heels or even.
Yes, Jargo. I know what you're going to say, Jargo.
Yeah, but real quick though, like I don't think Scott wanted it or even needed it.
That's the thing. He didn't need it. I mean, he would still get over. Like Scott Hall was one of the most popular guys on every roster that he was ever on. He didn't need the championship. In fact, he viewed it almost more as a hindrance.
Right. I mean, there are countless interviews where he said, "I never wanted to be the guy back then," especially like when he was, when Shawn was the champion. Shawn had no problem dropping the belt, to Scott in the mid '90s. He's like, "I didn't want it. I didn't want it. I didn't need it." He was only out there.
Yeah, I get that, and
I think the other thing for Scott Hall too was the creative process. When you have the championship, it's all about the championship, and Scott Hall knew that pro wrestling worked better when it was personal.
Yeah, I mean, him, Roddy Piper, Jake Roberts, those guys, they were intriguing enough characters. Mr. Perfect, they did not need the world title. They could just.
Henning's the only one I disagree with, because shouldn't the guy who claims to be perfect at least be the world champion once?
That's what makes him great, though, because he was a heel, and him not getting that is just like, are you really that perfect? Even though you never were the world champion.
Good material for people who went up against him. Yeah,
that's what made him as a heel be so great, because he did everything with it. Was spitting the gum and catching it, in his other hand like nothing. Him not being able to get the world title, I think that's what made the Mr. Perfect gimmick even better, but we're getting off track.
Oh, it's all good. But yeah, very, very sad. But on a positive note, I'm glad he was able to redeem himself and get into the Hall of Fame, not once, but twice, as I mentioned on Monday night. Not that many people have been inducted twice into the WWE Hall of Fame. Scott Hall will always have that accolade, a 2-time WWE Hall of Famer, and he will definitely be missed. By the way, Tom, he mentioned that Stone Cold versus Scott Hall would have been a dream match. You got to watch WrestleMania 18 because they actually did have a match, and everybody loves that stunner that Scott Hall took from Austin. That was definitely a great one. With the exception of The Rock, that might be the best.
It was a double stunner. It was a double stunner because he took 2.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, and of course,
it's not quite as cartoonish as The Rock cell, though.
Right, but it's still cool. It's still cool. Like
it's still a believable cell, but overly cartoonish, believable cell.
And real quick, Scott Hall's story of redemption. Can we just give a quick shout out to Diamond Dallas Page?
For sure.
For that, I mean, just talk about being an amazing human being to say, hey, I'm going to go help my mentor, one of my mentors who helped me get to where I am and make sure he's okay. And I think not just for wrestling fans, but as a human being in general, Scott Hall's story of, getting himself clean and, maturing to the point where he can, get past his demons is inspirational to anybody, no matter your age. So, Scott Hall, thank you and God bless you, brother. And I pray you're at peace.
And you mentioned Diamond Dallas Page here, and I remember the first time I saw Scott Hall. Unfortunately, I did not see him when he was in the AWA. That was a little before I was really digging deep into non-WWE stuff. But I did watch the first Super Brawl when he was out there with Diamond Dallas Page, and he was the Diamond Stud. That was the first exposure I had to Scott Hall. And then, of course, he went to WWE. And as I mentioned on Monday night, he brought the cool factor to wrestling, not just as Razor Ramon, but as himself in the NWO and Virtue. He was one of those guys that made it cool to be a fan of wrestling, and it was something you were not embarrassed about to say that you were a Scott Hall fan. You had Boink the Clown and all these cartoon characters, but then you had Razor Ramon, and he had some swag to him, and it made you appreciate what he did, and that he brought a different type of character from what everybody else was doing.
I had the Razor Ramon theme stuck in my head all week.
I played it at work, and my boss yelled at me because I played it loud.
I still listen to it, and the NWO Wolfpack theme.
Tires squealing and everything.
Yeah. The Wolfpack theme is so underrated, but I love that you brought up the strut, son, because I mean, to this day, like when you walk out of a door, tell me that both hands don't go to the side and you get a little bit of the Razor strut going. I mean,
got a whole crowd of
every time.
I've seen it every time.
I'm trying to figure out a way to do it in my wheelchair, like with my left hand.
Hey, on the football field, we've seen it. On the golf course, people will do it. Bowling, it's DX and Scott Hall mannerisms. I see more. And the Too Sweet.
And Virtue, you mentioned the fake Razor Ramon. You know somebody's good when nobody else can do that role. Like when they own that role and it cannot be recreated, that's when you know somebody did that character right, and that's what Scott Hall did with Razor Ramon.
Hey, real quick, was it Scott or was it Kevin that signed their WWE contract and used the WWE fax machine to send it over? I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Scott.
It sounds like something Scott would have done.
Classic.
Oh, and by the way, Psycho Jet Black says, does anybody remember the Wrestle Rock Rumble? Well, I did see that clip. My name is Sean. What is it? Sean and Marty. We like to party. Something like that. It's ridiculous, but look it up. It's really funny.
And Aaron, you brought up the AWA stuff. For anybody who didn't watch any AWA growing up or went back on the network and found it, one of my favorite tag teams of all time, Scott Hall and Kurt Hennig.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big Kurt Hennig big Scott Hall. And what was Kurt Hennig's nickname?
Cool Kurt
Hennig and big Scott Hall. And I forgot the rest. I just remember them standing there at the poolside for that commercial. And can we have a moment to appreciate that mustache that he had?
Yes. You know, he wanted to grow that back actually, but he was scared that if he did, people wouldn't like it because of how Razor and Scott Hall, like outsider Scott Hall got over. He was afraid to grow the mustache back, but he wanted to.
Classic Scott Hall. Well, we can talk about Scott Hall the whole hour plus, I'm sure. We got to get through these other topics. So that was a nice little tribute to Scott. Let's talk about Big E breaking his neck on SmackDown. Ridge Holland was giving him an over the head belly to belly where they actually flip over, not like a normal belly to belly. It was outside where it's slipperier on that mat, and Jargo, I'm going to come to you first because we talked about this on Vito's channel. Why does everybody have to have these big spots? And was this like a meaningless spot in this match where they could have just threw Big E into the post or something? Like, I just don't think Ridge Holland, right? Maybe he didn't do it right, but like Big E's the veteran. Should he not have said, hey, let's not do this spot here? I get it, right? Wrestling there's so much now, and they have to perform for these fans and not make them bored. But it just sucks that he broke his neck. And what do you think here?
There's so many different ways to kind of view the thing. I mean, number one, get well Big E, right? I mean, because we don't know, this could have been the end of Big E's career. Even though he's going to be fine, that doesn't mean that he's ever going to return to wrestling. Hopefully he does.
Right.
I think you're absolutely right. Like, this was a completely unnecessary move. And the problem is, I don't think that the new generation even really thinks about it. Where we talk about a guy like Scott Hall, where he'd be like, why would I do that? Like, why would I take that bump? And I don't think that the modern day generation even thinks about that. You could have done any number of moves and had the same result. It was just a throwaway move in the match. Like, nobody was going to remember that move. It's not like it was some big grand spot that everybody was going to be talking about for years. It was just an overhead belly to belly suplex. The other problem is, and this is not a slight against the talent, but Ridge Holland should not be doing these moves. I'm not even entirely sure that Ridge Holland should be on television at this point. He's still really, really green, and he's there for his personality. That's what he's there to do. He's there to get his personality over, rather than doing big moves like this outside of the ring where the timing is a little bit different. You don't get quite the bounce. You got to get a little bit lower, as Taz was explaining on his show, when it comes to how you got to execute these suplexes. And Ridge Holland just doesn't have that experience at this point. And I don't know as though he's ever going to get the experience if he keeps going out and hurting people, because this is not the first time that we've had this complaint with Ridge Holland. And I think he's just not ready for the spot that they have him in, just because he pops Vince backstage. So they put him out there with Baron Corbin to go tell his bad jokes. Stick with telling the bad jokes instead of doing stupid wrestling moves that you have no business doing to a guy the size of Big E.
Yep. Well said. Son, what do you think here? I mean, with modern medicine and how a lot of wrestlers with neck injuries have come back, such as even Stone Cold, even though he was never the same, but he didn't have to be because it was all about the character. I think Big E will still have some nice time left in his career, but he might be limited. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, just hearing Jargo go there about like the younger generation might not think about it. Because when I first saw it, just being a fan from a kid from the 90s, I thought immediately, oh dang, Stone Cold, this put him to only 5 years left in terms of being in ring. This took a decade out of Edge. So when you hear a broken neck, you're like, oh man, how much longer does Big E have? And thankfully we heard that it was basically, you think it was a fractured, but I'm guessing what I'm hearing though, what he did fracture was one of the most sensitive areas of part of the neck. So we don't know what he's going to be like. And you mentioned, I think, Virtue, the importance of having character. And that's one thing Big E's got down. He's got personality. He's got charisma. This New Day thing is so over that basically he has enough antics that if he has to change up his in-ring style, he can still be over with the crowd. So I'm wishing the best for Big E. It's really cool to see that even through this tough time for him, he's having such a great positive attitude. And I think he comes back well. As far as Ridge Holland's concerned, because I know some people are wondering, is he going to get punished over this? I do believe it was an accident. You could just tell. I saw the second before he went back to selling, he knew something was wrong. This is just a thing where I think maybe they had to just sit Ridge Holland down and say, hey, we're going to ban you from doing that type of move because it's not worth the risk with Big E being one of the highest merchandise sellers in the company. And then just watch what he's doing, and hopefully just chalk it up as far as an accident, and yeah, just choose more wisely as far as what's okay, like what's necessary and what's not necessary to do. So it's unfortunate, but like I said, I'm glad Big E is gonna be okay, and I hope to see him soon back in the ring.
Now, son, knowing how the New Day is and how Big E's really like owned this on social media with all the videos and stuff, they got a piece of merchandise right in front of them ready to sell to kids. A foam neck collar that says New Day. I don't know. I mean, right? And then
they did the same
just
thing,
to sell while
Roman.
He's coming back and training, and
They did the same thing with Roman when he got back from his leukemia. I think they made a shirt that was reference to coming back stronger. So I could see that great message in terms of letting know, hey, you can get stronger from whatever you face in life. Get back stronger.
Yep.
Yeah.
And son, you brought up Austin. I think Austin is a great one. We're going to talk about him obviously later, but when you look at the way Austin worked before the neck injury and the way that Austin worked after the neck injury. This isn't all on Ridge Holland. Big E takes some stupid bumps at times.
Like through the ropes when he does the spear through the ropes and lands on his shoulder.
Yeah, right. Spear through the rope.
Yep. I mean, it's time for him to slow down and work his size rather than look at how athletic I can be and just go out there and dominate people Bobby Lashley style.
That's fair. And he's got the charisma to be able to pull off the ladder there. All right, Nico, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, as somebody who has, neck and spinal issues, all love and respect to Big E. He fractured his V1 and his V6 vertebrae. Thank God nothing really broke, just a fracture. But you guys are both right. And professional wrestling, unfortunately, nowadays is becoming nothing but a big spot fest. Who can pop the crowd the most with their moves? Nobody is telling a story. Everything is just boom, 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 boom. I put part of the blame on Ridge Holland here, but I also put part of the blame on Big E because everybody wants to do the big spots just to pop the crowd. Nobody's really going to say, hey, I don't think we should really be doing this. Why are we doing a over the head, belly to belly suplex on the floor? In the middle of a tag match that no one is really thinking, wow, this is going to be one of the best tag team matches of WWE history. Come on now. I think it's one of those where it didn't need to happen. It's unfortunate it happened. I understand injuries do happen in pro wrestling. I get that. But when you constantly put yourself in situations where you need to know to avoid them, but you don't, you're asking for trouble. Thank God, Big E's in good spirits and being positive, and everyone is, able to at least have some sense of relief. But, maybe when Big E does come back, because I think he will, he might be on borrowed time, like how, Edge was, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Kurt Angle was also on borrowed time through his wrestling career. He went a little bit longer, but then, we all know Kurt's struggles and how he had to medicate himself just to keep going. Hopefully, Big E doesn't do anything like that. I don't think he will, but he's got to learn to wrestle smarter, so to speak. I don't think it was fair of somebody like Taz, you said, criticizing Rich the way he did in regards to the move. To me, that was kind of uncalled for at that point. I understand, wanting to teach people the right way, and I respect that. You should teach professional wrestlers the right way so every move can be performed properly and safely, but at that particular time and moment, I didn't think that was a cool thing. I thought that was a little, dirty cheap shot because Taz is over in AEW and this happened in WWE, but that's just my 2 cents.
Do they have a New Day's on SmackDown, right, Aaron?
Yeah.
Do they have the tag team title match, this SmackDown tag title match set for WrestleMania yet?
No, that's Rick Boogs. Oh, you're saying it's set. Yeah, it's Rick Boogs and Shinsuke Nakamura.
Oh, okay, and they're going against the Usos.
And they'll probably add some other people just like they're doing on the Raw side.
I'm just thinking like that'd be a nice little tribute to Big E since he's going to miss Mania, is have the New Day win the tag titles and have Big E at least get him on a backstage clip hugging him or whatever. I mean, I know it's a tag titles and they've won it, but if Vince McMahon's going to continue to build up New Day as the best ever, which he already has, give him one more. But
is Woods back?
What's that?
Is Woods back yet?
Oh, he's out too. Oh, so does that jeopardize all the WrestleMania? Because that sucks. Kofi might have to find a little thing to do.
Well, on a positive note,
he came back on a house show, I think. So Woods is back.
Oh, Woods. So okay, they could still do something.
I mean, I almost wonder.
Give Kofi the world title. Have him beat Roman after Brock.
Given the depth of the SmackDown,
I know. I just wanted to see what Voltron was going to do.
When you look at that SmackDown roster, though, I almost wonder if they're not worth more as individual singles than they are as a tag team, because there's not a whole lot of baby faces over on that SmackDown roster at this point.
That's true. Aaron, what do you think on this whole neck break? It's happened before in wrestling, so it's not new.
Yeah, people get hurt, and I don't think things are going to change, unfortunately. I think that with the competition, not just WWE versus AEW, but also the competition within the companies where everybody's trying to get a top spot on television, everyone's going out there and trying to put on the best performance possible and trying to do the most spectacular moves possible. And they know what they're doing. They're trained professionals and they know the risks that are involved, and accidents happen. I'm surprised there's not more people getting hurt.
And rather than putting all the blame on Ridge Holland here, there is somebody else that deserves part of the blame, and that's whoever the hell the agent was for this match that helped them put it together. Because Ridge Holland should have never been in that position to be giving Big E that move. That should have been kiboshed backstage before it even got to the ring.
They do that move all the time, though. Like every week they do.
And that's the problem. That's the problem.
The issue, like I was saying earlier, everybody has to do a thing to pop the crowd. Why are we doing the same big spot moves in every single match?
And that's why they don't mean anything anymore, because everybody's doing them all the time.
This is how things were in the Attitude Era, when you had people doing one crazy stunt and then they had to try to top that, and it just got really out of control, and they had to finally slow things down a little bit. And I don't know when that's going to happen, if it's going to happen, but yeah, I mean, they're all trying to go out there and top the previous performance.
Those matches clearly had a big impact. Yeah.
If people pay attention to talents like Scott Hall, they would realize that if you want to get over, slowing it down is the real way that you do that. You got to let this stuff breathe, and nobody lets anything breathe anymore.
I'm waiting for that style of pro wrestling to become new again. Like, they say old things become new again, and they.
But I'd love for the Snake Roberts style of match to come back in, at least not to dominate wrestling, but just to, like, if a match like that happens, people aren't saying, and I know Randy Orton's tried to kind of keep that old school alive over the years, but that would be.
Yeah, I think the closest we've gotten to that in modern wrestling, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I would say maybe the Punk and Darby match at All Out, that was kind of slowed down a little bit. I mean, yeah, Darby did his, great dive that looks like he's being shot out of a cannon, which is great. But that match was at least slowed down a little bit on a major card where you had nothing but, spot fest after spot fest like the Lucha Bros and the Young Bucks. And don't get me wrong, I love both those tag teams. But to what I was trying to convey earlier, I don't think every single match in professional wrestling needs to be, who can pop the crowd the most? Because we're going to have more rating. I agree. Like what happened to Big E. And that's the part that's, that's the sad part. I don't want to see anybody getting hurt, especially
Nico, let's be honest. Punk, that first match, Punk knew he was going to be slow and get his timing. Like that match with Darby Allin, that was Punk keeping himself protected, like
Okay,
yeah,
I'm not disputing that, but if you think about it, in modern wrestling, with what we're seeing continuously, that is kind of the style that we need in wrestling now, to where you're forcing, not necessarily forcing, maybe I'm using my words incorrectly here, but at least slow it down so you can let the story breathe, so it can make sense. That is what I'm needing more of in professional wrestling. I don't mind the OMG spots. I love them. I love being able to sit at a wrestling show and lose my mind. It's great. It's the best feeling in the world. But as a fan, I want to be able to let the story breathe so it can make sense and I can get emotionally invested.
Well said.
I was just going to add right quick that this is what I find so fascinating about Wardlow is I just was thinking it's very telling about how when he just took a ring and put it right on top of the wrestling ring, the crowd went crazy just because of a simple story of seeing this guy get abused verbally and abusively by his boss MJF. I'm like, that speaks volumes. Like, and they didn't have to do nothing. He gets over with a few power bombs, and I'm like, that's all he had to do. So I'm like, I say it all the time. A little bit of story goes a long way.
Yeah, but then he's going to do a running thing up the top rope and try to do a moonsault in a couple months. And I'm going to be like, what are you doing? You're a big guy. You don't need to do this.
I think you're right, though, son. I think the other part of that equation is MJF. I mean, when I look for somebody in the new generation that's kind of blending those two styles, MJF really strikes me as that talent.
Absolutely.
I would agree with that. As much as MJF and I got history, I would agree with that.
Well, he's an asshole. I mean, let's be honest.
Oh yeah, I know. I had my run-in with MJF.
Aaron, any super chats before we move on? Anything else you want to add?
We do have a super chat here. Let me get to that. Psycho Jet Black sent in $2. Says, I hope Big E stops doing the suicide dives, which we all talked about. And I think we're all pretty much in agreement on that. And not much else to say about it. I agree with everybody about Big E. I hope he is able to come back as close to 100% as possible. Tough to say right now, but based off of the video he posted today, he looks to be in good spirits, and the positive energy can go a long way. And thankfully, he was not more seriously hurt. That definitely could have been a lot worse. So
absolutely
glad he'll be back at some point. I'm thinking he will be. And hopefully he gets a good run, because I feel like he kind of got pushed aside after losing the WWE title. Maybe when he comes back, he'll get a renewed push. And one other positive about all this is the fact that so many people showed their support for Big E. And I thought that was really cool, because you have all these people arguing about WWE versus AEW, everybody insulting each other on Twitter all the time. But with Big E, you got everybody together in support of him. And I thought that was really cool. So that's pretty much all I have to say. Best wishes to Big E on a speedy recovery as much as possible.
I agree. Now, this topic, not really a long one here, so I don't know who wants to start with it, but I'm going to read this as is. Pete Dunne, now known as Butch. Welcome to the main roster, pal. All right. I don't have a problem, with wrestlers getting Vince McMahon, as long as they get an opportunity to still become something, which a lot of wrestlers in the past, you could say Keith Lee, Karrion Kross, really didn't. The problem I have with this is that Butch was the Bushwhackers guy's name, Luke and Butch. And that's unlike WWE to bring a nickname like that back. So Pete Dunne, right? We know what he can do, the Bruiserweight. He is now known as Butch, and maybe they'll still call him Pete Dunne Butch down the road, but we just know him as Butch on SmackDown. Son, you're smiling. Don't have to elaborate much on it. Just want your thoughts here.
No, I'm picturing that being the creative meeting. Of
I thought he had that
hat
on.
Him, this is your
he
new
still
hat,
has his hair.
pal. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they so I will say this. So actually, I was listening to most of SmackDown because I really only turn my head only if something interests me. And so basically I'm doing chores and stuff, and I'm listening to them talking about, hey, there's Butch. And I'm like, oh, Sheamus got a new person to his group. So I pick up my phone and I said, is that Pete Dunne? and then realize I've seen a lot of people go like, well, there goes his career. They've called him Butch. He's about to get buried. I'm like, well, first, let me say this. Tommaso Ciampa and Pete Dunne, they're getting that big payday. They are making that main roster money. So financially, this is going to be really cool for these guys. Even if they don't stick around, they're making some good money. So good for them. And then I think it's really cool putting Pete Dunne with Sheamus and Ridge Holland and sort of giving Sheamus his own group to lead, because I don't think Sheamus has had that yet in WWE. So it's really cool. He's one of the most decorated. He is, yeah, by far one of the most decorated champions in WWE history. He's done a lot of great stuff over the past decade plus. So seeing him now lead his group is really cool. As far as the name Butch, I don't know why they want to feel the need. They could have called him Pete Dunne. I don't know. And I think they're probably saying, well, he's just paying a tribute to the Butch Swatch. I don't know. Wasn't that the case
Hall
with
of Famers?
Yeah, but was that the case though with Keith Lee? They were saying, hey, that's a tribute. He's like, no, it wasn't a tribute. They just gave me the name because they thought it fit. So I'm gonna just still call him Pete Dunne, like I still call Dewdrop Piper Niven. I am just gonna use the name. I still say Rex Steiner because I'm not with the new name, so I'll just use the names that I think sounded cooler beforehand. But hopefully, I think this is a good spot for him. I just don't see the need to really have to change the name Butch.
Yeah,
right.
Nico, what do you think here?
You
like it, don't you?
Honest to God, I wasn't even watching SmackDown live on Friday night. I had just gotten home from work, and my best friend, we have a group chat on Messenger. San, you're in it with me and the Too Sweet crew, and Ezra, sends me a message. Freaking WWE creative. Butch, and I was like, oh boy, do I even want to turn on the TV right now? I turn on the TV, and what do I see? I was like, why does Pete Dunne look like somebody from Boardwalk Empire? What is going on here?
Now you said WWE creative. I'm pinning this on one of two people, Bruce Pritchard or Vince McMahon.
Oh, no, 1,000%.
Yeah.
It's Bruce. And I say that with love because Bruce is a great guy. Once you get to know him and actually talk to him, Bruce is great. But I don't know. To me, Pete Dunne, I'm still going to call him Pete Dunne, or I'll call him the Bruiserweight. He's still 28 years old, so he's still young. Maybe if he, runs with this a bit, if they let him see, everybody's like, oh my God, WWE creative, WWE main roster, he's dead. Oh my God, they're going to do him like they did, Keith Lee and Karrion Kross and so on and so forth. My thing is, look, unfortunately, Keith Lee and Karrion Kross, they didn't really get a chance. Keith Lee did a little bit, but then, his health got in the way. It did. Karrion Kross didn't really get a chance. Once they took Scarlett away from Kross, it was done deal. It was game over. Sorry. Love Kross. Great guy. But it was a done deal. So maybe if Pete Dunne gets a chance and they just let him do his thing as an in-ring performer, he can make it out of this. Especially if he's going to be with Sheamus for a bit. And like, San said, Sheamus is going to have his little group for a bit. It can kind of be like how Randy Orton did Legacy. Obviously, Pete Dunne and Rich Holland are a little bit older than, Ted DiBiase Jr. and Cody Rhodes respectively. But I kind of get that vibe. Maybe if, they can just work together for a bit, Pete Dunne can kind of get a chance to shine a little bit. And then he can show, hey, this could be he can show Vince and he can show Bruce Pritchard and all WWE creative, hey, this could be a big-time player for us down the road in the next 4 or 5 years.
Now, Jargo, I see this group that they're forming here. I don't know why. And I forgot to mention this to Vito. It's like a British version, a great British version of the full-blooded Italians or the Mamalukes here. I don't know. What's your thought here on Butch? Yeah, is he going to be Pete Dunne in AEW in a year?
God, I hope so. Pete Dunne is responsible for half of the greatest match that I've ever seen live. Pete Dunne versus Tyler Bate Takeover Chicago is the greatest match that I've ever seen live. And I didn't have any idea who either one of those guys was going into it. I think it's absolutely hilarious as somebody who doesn't really watch WWE because, Pete Dunne has been, the UK champion was for like a year. And then he comes over to NXT and he's had a good run down there and he's been on the main roster before. And oh yeah, he's a playable character in the video game that just came out a couple of days ago. So let's completely repackage him and change his name to Butch.
You think we get Pete Dunne out of it anytime soon, and Butch is his nickname? Like, what do you think?
I saw this and I was like, and this is why I don't watch WWE. You know, like it's the epitome of it. Like, it's just like, this is so stupid. Like, we all know who Pete Dunne is already. He's been a character on the show before. Yes. Like, it's just stupid. It's stupid. But it's another perfect example of, if this works, if Butch gets over, it will be in spite of Vince McMahon, not because of Vince McMahon. And there's way too many example of that.
He's going to have to channel his inner Dusty Rhodes with the polka dots and still get over.
There you go. I'm waiting though in about 3 weeks where they're like, oh, Butch was a nickname we gave him as a kid.
I hope so.
This is Petey, but Butch was his nickname we gave him as a kid or something, because him and Sheamus supposedly know each other, like we're in the same neighborhood or whatever they're gonna try to spin it, you know.
Hey, Jargo, that match you mentioned, and I remember that was awesome. That was the match that we ever got where it was Jim Ross and Morrow on commentary, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was awesome. I remember that now. Yeah.
Now he's Butch. Aaron,
that match was incredible, man.
Yeah,
and I had no idea who either one of those guys was going into that match, and it's just, they stole the show. It was an incredible match.
The devil's advocate here, watching that match, not knowing who either one of those guys were, what if you would have found out his name was Butch right then and there? Wouldn't have mattered then, huh?
No, it wouldn't have mattered then. But I also wouldn't have 4 or 5 years worth of history with Pete Dunne before they changed it. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing, is when it's already inside of your own ecosystem and you decide to change it, it just doesn't make any kind of logical sense.
If it would have been Butch from day one all this time, he would have been debuted as Pete Dunne last.
Hey, was there a storyline reason given why he changed the name to at least make the transition better?
Nothing.
I think what it is, I think that Pete Dunne is actually a member of the Jericho Appreciation Society, and Pete Dunne is his pro wrestler name, and Butch is his sports entertainer name.
There you go.
Anything you want to add, Aaron Rift?
Not much. I think that if Pete Dunne still has a job in WWE in 6 months, I will be surprised. I just feel like this is going to fizzle out very quickly. Like, I think it's a good idea on paper, the team, but the name I will always associate it with the Bushwhackers. So, yeah, if he was Butch from the beginning, I would not have taken him seriously. I think Butch is a terrible name for any wrestler if you're trying to have them be taken seriously.
And for the record, the Bushwhackers was a terrible name for the Sheepherders.
Shout out to Marshall in the chat who brought a good point. Things could be worse. They could have brought him in as the son of Kevin Dunne.
Yeah, well, Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat, said, at least Pete Dunne is not Kevin Dunne's nephew. I would have been entertained by that, though. I will say.
We could have had Kevin Dunne's nephew and Mitchell Cole's son, and they could have been a tag team.
Yeah, they could have. Shout out, by the way, to both Jeff Meacham and Greg Cherry. They are here in the chat room tonight. Hope you guys are doing well. And I guess I've said all I want to say about Pete Dunne / Butch. I'll see what happens with it and not knock it too much, but I'm not having high hopes for him in WWE on the main.
Any super chats to catch up on before we move on?
No, I think we're caught up here.
Okay. All right. The Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker match from Dynamite last night. And we have a new champion, Thunder Rosa.
Wait,
yes, Aaron.
Real quick.
Yes.
Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat, says, Butch versus T-Bar, and what happened to the graphic here? Butch versus T-Bar in a get your old name back match.
Ooh,
Vince Russo would post that, wouldn't he?
Love it.
Yeah. Yep. Get your old name back match. That's great.
Gotta hang it on a piece of paper on a pole.
hang it on a pole. Hang it on a pole.
We knew it was inevitable. That was clever, though. That Britt Baker was going to lose the title at some point. I mean, like, Big G's probably throwing a conniption fit. He's, he says he worked till 8, couldn't be on the show, blah, blah, blah. Jargo, that match was awful. They had a cage. Now, their bloodbath before, I put that match over. That was good. And I don't know whose fault it was. And you explained it very, very well on why you think, or on why I thought it was awful, and it made sense. So I'm just going to pass it to you. Kudos to the women, right, for being in a championship match. Any cage, Thunder Rosa goes over, great. I watched the match, and my girlfriend doesn't watch wrestling, and she's like, I could go in there and do that. You shouldn't be saying that. Take it away, Jargo. Why did I think this match was so like blah?
It's everything in between. It's what we were talking about with Scott Hall, and that's what they haven't figured out. Like, it was just spot, and then it felt like it was actually rushed, and the finish was, oh my God, we've got to get to the finish. We're running over on time. So I think that was a big part of it. But it's everything in between the spots that was just so disconnected. There was no story that was told through it. It was just, we're cheering violence for the sake of cheering violence, and we're not really emotionally invested in this because it should have happened a year ago. That should have been the blow off, was that big lights out match. It was so much better. And that's when the feud was its absolute hottest. They basically killed the town on Britt Baker versus Thunder Rosa. It hasn't had the same heat for at least a year, and they just kept putting it off, and it just fell flat.
I agree. Son, any difference of opinion there? I'm waiting to see if someone, because I swear, of course I saw on Twitter from some people, oh, that match was fantastic. I'm sure it was diehard AEW fans. I mean, I'm not the girls. It's, you go in there and you do that kind of match. It's tough on live television. So, like, I give them the benefit of the doubt. But what did you think?
All right. I did enjoy the match, but I don't necessarily watch these type of matches all the time. And like I said, I listen to so much of WWE in the background. So when I saw this match is coming on, I'm like, okay, they're going to go all out in this match, and I'm going to go ahead and sit down and watch this one. Yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was. But it did start to make me concerned for something moving on in the future, and I was thinking, with this feud with Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker, it felt like they went all out in the first match last year, and then they had whatever that the constant interference in the second match. I couldn't get into that. The third match, it felt like a decent sequel to their first match. But with all the thumbtacks and all the constant, like, violent spots, it gets to the point where I'm like, I hope they're not doing it too much where it gets numb, that you get numb to it. Because I think, for me, this happened a lot in Impact Wrestling, TNA, where they would have Abyss over and over, which almost seemed like every week doing the thumbtack spot.
Right, got overdone.
And I really want to get into those spots because I know those are extremely painful to do. But then when it's like, oh, he's just going to go into thumbtacks, and I shouldn't have that type of mentality towards it. And I'll give them credit on AEW. Like, when they were like, she was spamming the hand into the thumbtacks, I'm like, that's probably more painful than taking the back bump. And shout out to Aubrey Edwards, who just went into those thumbtacks, was like, 1, 2, 3, and rang the bell. Was not afraid at all. For me, I know I would have needed some sort of padded glove if I was going to do that. In the thumbtacks. But yeah, I enjoy the match for what it's worth, but it does really, going back to, like Jargo was saying about all the stuff in between, look at a feud like The Undertaker and Mick Foley. They had a regular match, then they build up to a Brawler Room Brawl match, then a Buried Alive match, and then they topped it in Hell in a Cell and never did one-on-one again. So when you look back on that rivalry, it starts off slow and has this big, huge impact in the end. And here it felt like it's the opposite. They started off so strong, and I was given this in one of my voice acting critiques last year, where they were saying that I started off really strong in the first couple of sentences and then kind of took it down. They were saying maybe do the opposite, go up and end big. I think that's what happened. Maybe if we would have got like a regular good one-on-one match with them, and then it goes into where the feud gets so full of hatred, they have to blow it off in this violent way. It's cool, but now it's kind of like, oh, they're just digressing because they did so much in the first one. So we'll see how it goes from here. I'm interested to see. I would have been okay with Britt Baker holding on to that title a little longer, because right now I think out of everybody, when it comes to the women's division, she's the most complete package. She's got the mic skills, she's got the looks, she's got the in-ring ability. We'll see how well Thunder Rosa can hang as basically being now like the face of the women's division. But I still look at someone like possibly Jade Cargill is going to be like the big star once her in-ring ability gets a lot more work in terms of better. So we'll see how things go. But I still feel like Britt Baker is probably going to be like the biggest superstar among the females right now with her segments and just her ability on the microphone.
One of my big fears, son, you brought it up, is it feels kind of like Sting in '89 when he finally got the belt from Flair, and everybody was like super happy. Yay, Sting won the belt. But they didn't spend any time building heel challengers for Sting once he won the belt. And so they had to make the change right back to Flair.
And the Black Scorpion.
Who is been built enough to challenge Thunder Rosa for this title other than Britt Baker?
Right. Like,
I got one more thing too that I'm also a little concerned about with AEW. I haven't seen the match yet, but I did see the graphic, and I'm like, they're doing Hardys versus Private Party already, and I'm thinking like they spent the whole year building this story up. Like, are they gonna do a story with Private Party first? Like, we can beat the Hardys at everything they do, and you have weeks of build up, and you build it for a big pay-per-view or a big Dynamite, but they just go right into the main. Like, I think sometimes AEW, even with MJF and CM Punk, they can rush these things too quickly. It's like, let it build and then let's have something. And but yeah, overall that's my thoughts though on it.
Yeah. By the way,
go ahead, Nico. Your turn.
Yeah. By the way, save your time and energy on that Private Parties Hardys match. God, was that rushed?
Oh,
anyways,
wow. Okay.
I am one of the biggest Britt Baker fans, Dr. Britt Baker, excuse me, fans in the world. Son knows this. I was a fan of hers way before she was on a wrestling web show called Chair Shot Reality on WrestleZone.com. So to see her get, this big, the title finally at Double or Nothing, and then all of a sudden she's running through everybody, which is great. But like, Jay said, who are you going to have dethrone her? Obviously, they were probably waiting for Thunder Rosa, but after the Lights Out match, who was the person that got over? It was Britt. It wasn't the person who won the match. Britt got over. Now you expect me to believe, after Britt's running through everybody, all of a sudden Thunder Rosa is going to come in, beat her for the belt in a match that was completely rushed. Again, we talked about it earlier. They just tried to do high spots at their high spots. If you saw the match, the thing with the chair contraption was totally uncalled for and totally unnecessary. I'm looking at it and I'm like, what am I witnessing right now? I just think this match was bad. It was a total letdown from their Lights Out match. It was like a bad sequel, which sucks because they're two amazing, talented women who can both bring something that complement each other. I just thought the match was bad overall. I'm interested to see what they do with Thunder now as champion, because she doesn't have any real believable, competitors other than maybe Jade Cargill. Do they take the TBS title off of Jade and have her go after Thunder, or is she still green for that? Like, I don't know what AEW is doing. They don't really have somebody to be like, okay, is Thunder just being a transitional champion? I would be shocked if Thunder Rosa carries the title past All Out this year.
Nico, I'll tell you what AEW is doing. They're doing about 975,000 every week on Dynamite. That's what they're doing.
The other thing that worries me, and you can come back to me in like 6 weeks on this one. In about 6 weeks, people are going to be complaining that, we're not featuring the women's division enough because Britt Baker ate up a lot of TV time as the AEW women's champion, and they're not going to be having Thunder Rosa going out there and cutting 10, 15-minute promos.
She can't.
At least I hope to hell they're not, because she can't talk like that.
That's the next person, but she, as a performer, but she cannot cut a promo.
But if so, how are we going to feature the women if we're not going to have the champion out there cutting promos and people cutting promos opposite of her? Like, this is going to be a real problem going forward.
Just have her do what WWE had Asuka do. Just shout in her language.
But Asuka has a certain type of charisma, a charisma that was so impactful. Vince McMahon put the title back on her several times. So how many people are going to have Asuka's charisma?
Today, we're echoing.
Everybody out of nowhere, it just started.
Yeah. I love seeing my Latinas get their due and get that spotlight. But I think this is just bad timing. AEW booked themselves into a corner, and I don't know how they're going to get out of this down the road.
Aaron, anything? Now, Nico, you didn't echo when you talked. Something's going on your end.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's okay. I don't know if you got to turn your volume down a little bit or
echo.
Just because when you talked, it didn't echo, so I assumed it's on your end. Is that how that works, Jargo?
Typically.
Aaron, you want to add anything to this?
Well, I'm hoping we can get this echo issue fixed. Well, we'll just go with it, folks.
Oh, we haven't seen that for a while.
I wasn't hearing an echo, but okay.
Well, but we're thinking it's something. Did you turn your volume up or something, or no?
No.
Oh, okay.
If anything, I turned it down.
All right, I'll go ahead and just go with this. I liked the match. Was it better than the Lights Out match? Probably not. I actually think the Lights Out match was my personal favorite of their matches up to this point.
Same.
But I did enjoy the match. I mentioned on Wednesday night's recap, my biggest problem with it was Britt Baker setting up all the chairs and Thunder Rosa's just up there in the corner doing nothing there as Britt Baker is taking forever to set up these steel chair piles or whatever she was doing. That was my main criticism of the match, but I absolutely think Thunder Rosa was the right person to beat Britt Baker. I've been saying this for months now. 6 months ago, I was like, Thunder Rosa's the one you got to go with to win the title from Britt Baker. Britt had a great run, and now it's time to go with a face champion. I do think there might be a problem with a lack of heel challengers. The biggest heel next to Britt Baker is Jade Cargill, and she's got the TBS title right now. So what do you do at this point? I think the echo is gone now. So whatever happened there must
Don't touch anything.
I was going to say there's a Serena Deeb as well, too.
Yeah.
Good point. Very good point there, son. Serena Deeb has been doing some great stuff with the 5-minute challenges. So I think she could be a really good contender. And they're repackaging Chris Statlander. Maybe she goes heel and they push her for the women's title. So we'll see what they do. I think Thunder Rosa is a great character. And I think if she goes out there and just is herself, I think she could possibly shine on the mic. Give her a chance. Wardlow went out there and he did really well. I think we got to see what Thunder Rosa can do and really give her the opportunity to just speak from the heart and see what she says. But I feel like she makes that connection with the fans, and I'm all for her as champion. And I thought the match was better than pretty much every women's cage match in WWE, the Hell in a Cell matches like Sasha Banks and Charlotte. I thought it was better than all those. Still not as good as the men's cage matches, but I thought it was solid.
Ugh. Well, that's your opinion. You're right. You have the right to have it. You got some super chats came in. I saw something that said Virtue.
Yeah, we do have a few here. Psycho Jet Black says, Virtue, are you a big fan of Jade Cargill?
As long as they keep making her not the typical mold of an AEW wrestler and more of a sports entertainer, absolutely. But I'm going to reserve that and see where this goes.
And Dwayne Atkinson with a $5 super chat says, Hardys versus Bucks versus FTR versus Red Dragon ladder match. Who would win? Book it, please, Tony. That sounds like an awful lot of craziness.
That's too much.
Yeah, it might be. It might be a little bit too much. I think your best value.
Can the Hardys afford that at this point in their career? I wonder.
Good question. I think your best value.
Matt belongs nowhere near a ladder. Please, God, no.
Right. And going back to what we were saying earlier, like, you know they're going to do it, though, at some point, because, again, they want to go out there and have the best match possible. Remember a couple months ago with Jeff Hardy? I think it was actually during the Thunderdome when he did some crazy swanton off the top rope to the outside onto the steel steps. Yeah. And I thought that was batshit crazy for him to even attempt something like that. Like, what the hell are you doing? You're in your early 40s now doing crazy shit like that could possibly cripple you. Like, it's insane. But that's what they do. They live for the moment. They live for the thrill of the fans cheering them. And I don't think anything's going to change. You know, maybe if Big E got really seriously hurt, possibly, but he's going to be okay. And I think it's just going to be business as usual.
The answer to who wins is the executive vice presidents.
Right. I was getting ready to say, like, when we finally do get the Hardys versus the Young Bucks in AEW, do the Young Bucks go over like they made sure they went over when they wrestled FTR for the very first time? I mean, like, yeah.
And hey, you know what? The AEW, they got their TV deal. They're they're hanging in there. They're doing pretty well. And WWE even brought up in the MLW lawsuit response.
Jargo, explain to Aaron why. Aaron, go ahead. Finish your statement.
Right. So they brought up the success of AEW to get the lawsuit dismissed. And AEW, they're selling.
But that doesn't mean they think AEW is successful. Their legal team is doing that to say, oh, there's a competition that's able to survive on their own.
$1 million gate for that show in Inglewood, which Jeff Meacham, who is criticizing AEW in the chat room, bought a ticket for. So if you're going to complain about AEW, maybe you shouldn't be buying tickets to their upcoming shows. Just saying.
Well, I don't buy tickets for AEW.
I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about Jeff.
But yeah, anyway, are we good to move on to the
Stone
Cold
there's a lot
main
of
event?
Out there. They might say, oh, AEW is doing too many spots, but yet when AEW comes to your town, you're going to buy a ticket.
Hey, even though AEW does do a little bit too much from time to time, I'll admit it's a great show. It's a great time to be there. Just the energy of the building.
Right, and that's because everybody's doing all the crazy stuff, and people go to watch all the excitement and the spectacle that is All Elite Wrestling.
Hey, AEW's got its issues, but I will admit that consistently, from top to bottom, I do enjoy it more than Raw and SmackDown. Like I said,
that's a pretty low bar.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean,
both companies have their faults and everything, but there's still a lot more freshness in AEW than the way WWE's been producing more often than not.
I just watched the main events of WWE, and that's it. And then I followed.
What do you mean, son? We give you Butch. Yeah.
I'll catch the rest on social media or YouTube. So, all right, main event time. Stone Cold Steve Austin, and it's WrestleMania season, and we know he's going to be in a segment. That's what in the KO show. What's going to happen here? Like, what? There's a couple things I want everybody to answer. A, what do you think is going to happen? What can Stone Cold do at this point in his retired career where it's not going to be a match, but can he do more than just a stunner? Is he going to get in better shape? I believe he injured his ankle or something like that when he kicked someone in the groin before a stunner in the past. So, this is retired Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he doesn't do this all the time, so you worry about him getting hurt. But more importantly, what has he meant to WrestleMania? And that includes all the appearances. He stunned Donald Trump at a WrestleMania, going back to his matches against The Rock. And I know, son, you're the big Stone Cold guy here, so I'm going to come back to you a little bit later. Jargo, I know you're chomping at the bit here. Stone Cold Steve Austin, what has he meant to WrestleMania?
Well, I mean, he means everything. I mean, because he's the fastest rising, hottest burning star that we've ever seen. It's just he did burn out really, really quickly because of the injuries.
Is it safe to say that Stone Cold is responsible for WrestleMania's moving from arenas back into stadiums pretty much full time? If you kind of think around Houston, and I know they went back to the Garden and something in LA once for, I think, WrestleMania 21, but
yeah, I mean, I feel like that was going to happen regardless, but WWE never gets that hot without Stone Cold Steve Austin. So, I mean, regardless, I feel like the answer is yes, right?
Right.
But to me, it's interesting when you look at WrestleManias, because whether it's Austin, whether it's Cena, whether it was Hogan, the top guys don't always seem to have their best records at WrestleManias, which is interesting to me. But clearly, Austin is the biggest star on any card that he is going to be on. He's one of the very few needle movers that there is. And I mean, Austin by himself will probably sell those extra 10,000 tickets they still got laying around for WrestleMania. What I am curious about is what exactly they do, because obviously we're advertising the KO show. So is this just going to be a stunner and that's it? I mean, is that what it's going to be? Because I'm not sure I even really want to see a Stone Cold Steve Austin match. Like, if I have my choice between watching Stone Cold Steve Austin wrestle for 10 minutes or Stone Cold Steve Austin talk to Kevin Owens and go back and forth off of Kevin Owens on a microphone for 10 minutes, I think I'm going to take the microphone and a stunner at the end and send everybody home happy while they're drinking their beer. I really feel like that's probably the best case scenario here. Worst case scenario is they try to turn this thing into a match and it doesn't go well. It ends up being, Shawn Michaels' return match that nobody wants to pretend happened.
Well, Jargo, the thing about that Michaels match is Michaels was actually the best performer of the 4 in that match, as far as I'm concerned.
Again, a very low bar, right? But I don't think that Shawn Michaels, I don't think that's what he wants to be remembered for. He wants people to pretend like that Undertaker match was his last match. He was very, very proud of that match. And I don't think he's very, very proud of the Saudi Arabia or Australia matches. And I think Stone Cold is fine with his last match being against The Rock. But if this is just going to be, Stone Cold comes out and he drinks a little beer and he lets the crowd say what, and then at the end of it he gives Kevin Owens a stunner and drinks his beer, everybody's going to be happy going home, and Kevin Owens can complain about it for the next year. I mean, Aaron, I think it's fine.
Read Jargo Mr. Tito's comment there.
Mr. Tito says, "Are you nuts? Austin worked with a broken neck. He can work in his late 50s."
And he looks like he's in great shape.
Apparently getting in good shape for this.
But even Stone Cold Steve Austin at the peak height of everything that he did, it was a walk and brawl with a Thez press and a stunner. And that's all I need.
Yeah.
But I don't want to see Kevin Owens try to give him a pop-up power bomb. You know what I mean?
It'll be a stunner and a stunner, but Austin won't take it. I mean, I'd be surprised if.
I imagine we get the WrestleMania 14 finish. Like, Kevin Owens strikes me as the kind of guy who wants to go through the entire super kick, catch it, spin him around, give him a stunner, boom, everybody goes home happy.
Yep. Nico, what do you think here?
I think that whatever this KO show is going to be, first of all, I'm super happy for Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen, whatever you want to call him. Great guy. I'm glad he's going to get this moment and kind of get this quote-unquote rub. But whatever they do here, I think it has to be a match, even if it's like a 6 to 8 minute match. I mean, like Jay said, all Austin really needs to do is fire off a couple of right hands, flip on the bird, do a fast press, a few piston rights, get back up, hit him with a stunner, 1, 2, 3, send the crowd home happy. I don't know what they're gonna do here, but I think if there was ever a time for Austin to have one more match, and I'm not saying that they go this route. If they don't go this route, I'm fine with it. But if there was ever a time for Stone Cold Steve Austin, arguably one of the biggest stars ever in WWE history, this is it. Kevin Owens is the perfect guy that'll take care of him, that will protect him, because I know how KO works. One thing I do want to talk about, though, is Austin's promo. I know it was a pre-recorded promo, but Jesus, how great was that? I mean, I kind of just put everybody else on WWE programming to shame when they're live.
Sure.
When they have a live
Austin cutting a live promo is great. Imagine when he can do it over and over again until he absolutely likes it.
That's what I'm saying. But this is just Stone Cold Steve Austin in a pre-recorded promo out in the middle of the desert, coming off of his, what was it, a dune buggy? And he just freaking knocked it out of the park. Yeah. And I'm sitting there watching that promo, and I'm like, oh, my God, I should go to Dallas just to watch this. I care about nothing else.
Right?
Like, why is a guy – yes, I know Stone Cold Steve Austin's arguably the biggest star WWE's ever had, maybe even bigger than Hogan to an extent. But why is a guy who has not been on your program that much, who has not wrestled the match in over a decade plus, coming in with a pre-recorded promo, and he basically is better than everybody on your main roster right now, excluding maybe Roman, and that's a big maybe.
Here's what I would love, Nico. For this just to be a segment, however it ends. And I don't know how they would do this, especially now that the pandemic is over and they're not doing the stuff in the Thunderdome or the PC. I would love for us to get a Kevin Owens and Stone Cold Steve Austin's Ranch cinematic match out of this. I don't know if they would have aired on Raw, Smackdown, or PLE, but like Undertaker did with AJ Styles, I would love to see that. because then you could make this thing special to protect.
Look, that would be awesome, and I'm all for it because you can have creative, freedom with stuff like that. But with the fans in itself, would they be okay with that?
They love the Undertaker thing, even though that was, they had no choice there.
We were in the middle of a global pandemic, and we were thinking,
like,
oh my
why
God,
not?
thank God I at least have wrestling.
Would you rather have that or nothing? Just a stunner at the end of a segment?
Well, I think that what they're going to do is they're going to do like, whoever called, the WrestleMania 14 spot where, KO goes for the super kick, Austin catches it, spins him around, do-si-do, stunner, adios amigo. But like that's going to be the finish, obviously. But I think if there was ever a time for a 6 to 8 minute match, maybe this is it. And I mean, I would love to see a
3-minute match.
Yeah, because I feel like the other thing that we got to be careful of here is Kevin Owens is going to have to work for the next 3 to 5 years here. Like you can't have like Stone Cold go out there and just freaking bury this dude.
Right, and I don't think Austin would do that because Stone Cold's not that guy. Austin knows, hey, KO's here for the future. I'm going to make sure this guy looks good, especially because they both respect each other. It's common knowledge. But I think also at the same time, Austin's going to be like, wait, if you're really going to get me to come back, if you're really going to get me to do this, I got to try to be the old Stone Cold as much as I possibly can.
For sure.
If only KO could walk out of this with Stone Cold laying in the middle of the ring. That's a lot. We just don't see that anymore.
You know what?
You could rebuild Kevin Owens back up as a super main player because he can brag about burying Stone Cold Steve Austin on the grandest stage of them all. Segment or match, whatever it is.
Austin would do it, but Vince won't go for it.
What he should do is he should put Austin in a sharpshooter and have him pass out in a pool of his own blood.
Austin would do it, but Vince won't go for it.
So, are you anything else you want to add, Nico? Because we still got Aaron and of course Son. I'm saving for last on this.
No. I think whatever they do though, it's going to be amazing.
Aaron, over to you. Cover some super chats, and then we'll let Son finish this topic since that's his boy.
All right. Hamp Cano sent in a $5 super chat. Says they should have done an Austin match 10 years ago with Randy Orton and CM Punk. Yeah. I feel that it's too late for all this. Well,
yeah, they teased it for the WWE 13 video game, and they let that go.
That was an incredible sit-down interview. Yep.
It was
amazing.
Thank
you for that, Hamp.
It was right there. What?
I mean, let's be fair. A Stone Cold Steve Austin match at this point in his life, way more better chance of happening than Vince McMahon from that other crap thing that was rumored.
Right. Well, I would have liked to have seen the CM Punk match, but you know what? As I mentioned before, this is a good opportunity for him to come back in Dallas, Texas, to sell some tickets for WrestleMania. I just wish they would go all the way with this. If he's coming back and he's going to get physical, make it a match. This KO show thing, I think, is a little bit goofy, but we'll see how things play out. They got 2 more weeks. I'm just wondering if Austin even shows up before WrestleMania. Like, I feel like he needs to be there for this to really feel like a big deal. Like, they got to do something in Chicago or something just to get us fired up that this is actually a thing. Like, right now, I'm just like, yeah, he's coming back. And I'm sure, like Nico said, whatever they do, it'll be fun to watch. But right now, I'm just really wanting something to happen leading up to this to get me really pumped up for it. And I just don't think they've done it yet.
I guarantee you, if they were to say, hey, this is actually going to turn into a match or at least hint at it or tease it, other than just, the KO show, whatever, the majority of those 10,000 remaining tickets, as Jay has taken off, the majority of those tickets were
to take a leak.
Okay.
Well, where did Jargo go? Chat room. Wrong answers only. Go ahead. Anyways, let me get to this other super chat here from Psycho Jet Black. He sent in $5. Thank you guys for the super chats. He says, honestly, I don't see Kevin Owens ever reaching the level of Stone Cold, so I would not be surprised if he just comes in, does a stunner, and gets out. I mean, you might be right. I think they're going to do more than what they've done. It's just a matter of how much do they actually do with this. But I'm thinking that Kevin Owens might get some offense on Austin, but in the end, Austin will lay him out with the stunner, and that'll be that. Maybe they didn't want to do a match because Austin beats Kevin Owens in a match, then that makes Owens look weaker than just taking a stunner, and Austin does his beer celebration and whatnot. So we'll see what they do. I guess Goldust versus Roddy Piper wasn't really a match. It was like a fight, and then it ended with Piper stripping Goldust or whatever the hell they did, and that was that. There was not really an actual match between them. So I feel like it's going to be very similar to that Hollywood backlot brawl between Goldust and Roddy Piper, where it was a fight but not an actual match.
Except on a Texas ranch.
Right. Maybe they'll recreate the O.J. Simpson chase like they did for WrestleMania.
Yeah, that was funny. Ultimately, that was almost going to be Goldust versus Razor Ramon there, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Razor got suspended.
Yeah.
So they had to come up with something else. But yeah, the first thing I thought in mind when they announced that this was going to be like a brawl or a fight type segment, I thought of that Hollywood backlot brawl, which actually was not officially a match, but just Piper and Goldust beating each other up and doing these little skits and stuff leading up to it.
All right. We got a super chat, Aaron.
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. Psycho Jet Black. He says Jargo's absence was longer than The Rock versus Eric Rowan.
I mean, it's getting to be like 8:30 here in the Central Time Zone, and I have hungry children that want to know when we're going to eat. So,
and what do you guys think? Should Austin actually come out in his gear for this? Like, I think so. If they're hyping this up as his first fight,
or at least the No Way Out 2003 with the jeans, shorts, and the vest. At least that.
I mean, I'm sure he looks great cosmetically. You see him on the Broken Skull sessions, and he looks in great shape for somebody his age. I mean, I'm sure he's got some abs down there under that shirt. I think he'll be fine coming out there and being in his ring gear. Now, Hamp Kano sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you, Hamp. He says, I imagine WWE is letting Austin do what he wants because he has a history of leaving if he doesn't like the creative plans. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, Austin's got to have a say in this and do what he wants to do.
Yeah, that's true. All right, son, you've been waiting here. Go.
Yeah, 94 I started watching wrestling, but it wasn't until 98 that Stone Cold Steve Austin made me a lifelong fan. He is my all-time favorite. And I'm like, what? It's 2022? What? Stone Cold is still the best, most talked about thing going into WrestleMania? What? I mean, wow, yeah, he's the most hyped thing that I'm looking forward to. Now, we just mentioned about how Steve Austin ain't gonna take crap from creative team. You see, when it comes to Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar, really want to get into it as much, but with the way they've treated those storylines all this time, it's like, what are we going to get here? But with Stone Cold, he ain't playing no jokes with creative team. He's doing it or he ain't doing it at all. So he's going to make sure this segment is good. But that being said, and Nico, you're absolutely right. The hype that Steve Austin brings and that promo, and he's just looking into the camera and he's talking about, it must mean you're a dumb son of a bitch because Stone Cold's coming back to stop a mud hole, and you're just, man, nothing brings the hype to this day. Looking at it, though, it is a weird build-up because Kevin Owens has talked trash and says he's threatened Austin with physical harm. Steve Austin has responded about fighting for the honor of Texas, and he's going to respond to Kevin Owens with physical harm. So we already know they're going to beat each other. They want to beat each other up, so they're going to first try to talk it out before. Like, what is the point in talking? So the build-up has been weird. 19 years since we've seen Steve Austin. We've seen him over the past 20 years. Come in and have moments where he's gotten physical. He got physical last time you were in Dallas, Texas for WrestleMania. And I think that's what you were wondering about, Virtue. Yeah, I think he messed up his arm while trying to punch Rusev. So it's interesting. I see this going two ways. Either one, they just come out and do the talking segment, very similar to Roddy Piper and Austin at WrestleMania 21, which is an awesome segment. And then it ends with them getting physical. I think he gets a little bit more physical like he did against Alex Riley after WrestleMania 27. We're going to see him do the Luthez press and, the elbow spot into the stunner. So he's going to give Kevin Owens some shine, for sure. It ends up being that most likely. Or two, I think they end up doing, they wait for Austin to come out. There's no music music at all. Nothing. And Kevin Owens is waiting in the ring. The fans are booing. And the announcer has to go like, ladies and gentlemen, I've just been told that Stone Cold Steve Austin will not be participating in the KO show. And Kevin Owens like, I told you he wasn't going to show up. He's a coward. And she says instead he will be entering this following match, which is scheduled for one fall. Crowd goes crazy. Glass comes out. Steve Austin comes walking and talking to trash in the gear. And people's like, oh, we didn't know it. And then they do everything else that I say. So it's going to be one of those two. It's just funny if that's how it ends for The Rock and Steve Austin. That same stadium. Rock had his squash match against Eric Rowan in a few seconds. Austin has his squash match in a few seconds. He didn't like, though, the way they had Eric Rowan against The Rock. So he said, he's like, at least give the kid about 1 or at least 2 minutes of offense. So he's going to go ahead and let Kevin Owens get some in. But at the end of the day, it is Stone Cold Steve Austin. He is one of the biggest superstars. He is going to be entertaining no matter what they have him do. We've got some great matches, but like I say, Stone Cold, the one thing that the creative team, they're not going to screw this up because Steve Austin will make sure they do not screw it up. And that's the bottom line, because we know Stone Cold will tell the creative he said so.
All right.
If Kevin Owens would somehow beat Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania, what would be the longer booing segment? When Roman Reigns beat The Undertaker, or Kevin Owens standing in the middle of the ring the night after WrestleMania with a microphone getting booed out of the building? Because I kind of want to see that.
Well, I don't think that would get. I think some people would cheer Owens because he's one of their darlings. But again, if we're talking about
it's Stone Cold, especially if he would win by like nefarious means, like kick him in the dick and then give him a stunner.
Well, you realize they would have to allow him to stay in the ring to get booed that long, and they write Owens to stand in the ring that night to do that.
Hey, you know what though? If they did that, if by some weird way, I don't want to say miracle, because either way, whoever wins, I'd be happy. If Kevin were to somehow beat Stone Cold, that'd be the biggest shot in the arm to his career right then and there.
Like, won't happen.
Let me bring up this extended line.
Saying it will. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but I'm saying if it did, Kevin Owens is automatically a made man, and he's a mainer in WWE for life.
Let me bring up this extended line. No disrespect at all towards Kevin Owens, but Stone Cold Steve Austin is one of the all-time biggest stars. I feel that if you are going to bring Stone Cold back, you bring him to lose, and you're going to have him lose. You have him lose to the top guy, and that's Roman Reigns. If Steve Austin's coming for a match, it's got to be him versus Roman Reigns, and you have Roman go ahead and beat Steve Austin and submit his leg, because there's no shame in Austin losing to Roman to put over the top guy. Again, that's a very accurate way. People coming back to watch Steve Austin and like, oh, this Roman Reigns guy looks pretty cool. I always talk about use that, and Roman's already established now.
But I don't think Roman gets anything out of beating an old, I haven't been in the ring for 19 years, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
But it's like when he beats The Rock, though.
They're building that for The Rock. Roman and The Rock.
And I don't think that Kevin Owens gets that either, because Kevin Owens is already 40 plus years old. It's not like he's going to do anything. But if you had somebody like an Austin Theory, if you had or a Braun Breaker, if you had some young up and coming talent that you could put over Stone Cold Steve Austin, that he could brag about it for the next 15 years, like an MJF type of character, I think it would be worth entertaining the idea of Austin losing at WrestleMania. I just don't think they're going to do it with a 41-year-old Kevin Owens.
I just think Steve Austin is such a big star. If he comes back out of retirement, you have to make it as if it's the biggest deal ever. And if he's going to lose, you got to make sure that that's somebody who's going to be seen as a top guy, or someone at least you're building towards the top guy. Because unfortunately, that ship has sailed on him and CM Punk.
But are you saying, though, that Kevin Owens cannot be a top guy?
No, I absolutely believe he can, but they haven't built Kevin Owens up to that point.
Okay, that's why I'm saying if there was ever a time to get him back up there, and I'm not saying WWE is going to do this, I fully expect Austin to win the match, or whatever the heck they're going to do. I fully expect Austin to, go out on top. But I'm saying if there was ever a time to get Kevin Owens back into the main event picture for the foreseeable future, this is it.
I don't think Vince McMahon would ever make Kevin Owens the top guy, because I don't think that Vince McMahon looks at Kevin Owens and says, yeah, I could put him on the WrestleMania poster every year in the main event.
And I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying if there was ever a time, because you need more main event guys, because we don't have that many. I mean, Roman's destroying everybody, rightfully so, including KO back from early last year. But if you were ever to think of like, okay, we do need to try to get something somewhat fresh up into the main event picture, this is Kevin's opportunity to get back up there because there's nobody else.
For the Raw brand. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, because there's nobody else.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at the Raw brand. Who do you have right now as a main event guy? Honest to God.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean,
that's a
potentially Rollins, Lashley if he's healthy. You know, you got a few.
Well, I mean, in Virtue's mind, Cody Rhodes is going to be the new Roman Reigns over on Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, and
it has to be the right thing. It has to be the right thing if you bring Austin back. It has to be the right moment.
WrestleMania logo on his things, but we'll see.
Veer is the most over thing on Raw right now, Rat. You're absolutely right.
I swear, when Veer finally does appear, they're going to change his gimmick right then and there, like they did at Melina.
I'll say this: if WWE wants to destroy this whole thing where we're talking about KO or Steve Austin, have Veer come out and have him stack him and pin him. Says, "See, Roman's not the only one." Oh my!
Man, Veer ain't getting out of
Texas alive. That's a debut.
Veer ain't getting out of Texas alive.
Aaron, any other super chats come in?
Yeah, and by the way, damn you, Psycho Jet Black, for reminding me of that King of the Road match from Uncensored 1995 with the Blacktop Bully versus Dustin Rhodes. Yeah. Anyways, Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat and says, "Now I wonder what's in Jargo's refrigerator there."
You don't want to know.
Decapitated head.
Don't want to know. You ever seen The Salton Sea?
No.
Go watch The Salton Sea, and then you'll know what's in my refrigerator.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Well, you got an assignment, Psycho Jet Black. Go do that. Anyways, we are caught up now.
All right, let's do our plugs because we're past an hour and a half. Son, welcome back again. It's always a pleasure having you on. I'll start with you.
Yeah, always a pleasure talking WWE, AEW Pro Wrestling, and hope you guys, NoDQ Universe, enjoyed, or I should say the Galaxy, no universe here. WWE, they've gotten into my mind. But you guys, if you want to...
Wrong image.
But if you guys want to go ahead and follow my content, I make all my content here on YouTube, and I also basically have behind the scenes footage and stuff like that on my TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And as you can see, that is a trailer for my upcoming short film Battle Deception, which is inspired from anime. So yeah, if you want to follow my filmmaking, acting journey, tons of voice acting content, tons of on-screen acting content, all right there on my YouTube channel. As you can see, spelled SONGOSHUAKU. I'll comment below, and you can just click on my username and be able to follow my content here. Therefore, everybody, Team NoDQ, thank you so much. Pleasure once again doing all this, and always support NoDQ.com.
All right, Nico.
Yes, thank you again so much for having me back on here. It's an honor to be on with you guys, as always. I love talking pro wrestling with just about anybody at any time. You can follow me on Twitter at true_Nico. That's TRUE_NIKO. Let's talk wrestling. Follow me on at 2Sweet Cosplay on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That is Cosplay Wrestling Group, the #1 cosplay wrestling group out of Chicago. We will be coming to a C2E2 at some point this August for that convention, and we got some other cons in the works for sure. Let's talk pro wrestling. We're changing the pro wrestling and the cosplay community one con at a time. Let's have some fun. Let's talk pro wrestling. Thank you guys so much for having me on here. It's an honor as always, and I can't wait to do it again.
Good having you on, man. Jargo.
I'm
feed the kids.
I'm looking at Walter's super chat here, and I'm thinking to myself, God, what's worse, Gunther or Butch? Gunther or Butch? I think I got to go with Butch on this one. I think I got to go with Butch on this one. Keep up with me across social media platforms at NotJargo. Signing off from the 203. Talk to you from Yucatan.
Good being on. You're a staple here now, by the way. I think you know that. Even when you're in the midst of moving or getting ready to move. Aaron.
Let's throw up that Walter Cruz super chat. I'm biased, but Walter's name change is still dumber than Butch, but that's just me. I mean, I've already forgotten about the Walter name change, but then again, I really do not watch NXT, so yeah, it's a bad name either way. Both of them are bad, and it's just the way it is. I think we've all become numb to it at this point. We just know that they like to change the names, and just got to deal with it. Don't get too comfortable with somebody's NXT name because it's probably going to change on the main roster. And Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Says T-Bar is still the worst name. Sorry, Aaron. Well, it is what it is. I mean, T-Bar is definitely a terrible name for a wrestler. I mean, that's for sure. Dominic Dijakovic, nothing wrong with that name, but I guess it was too long for Vince's liking, and they already had Dominic Mysterio, so they had to come up with some stupid name for him, and they
just call him Dijak for the love of God.
Exactly.
That'd be too easy. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. This was a really fun panel and a lot of stuff coming up with WrestleMania. We got a lot of live streams, so make sure you guys subscribe over at youtube.com/AaronRift NoDQ. And that's all I got. Virtue.
All right. Follow me on Twitter at NoDQ_Virtue. Go over to NoDQ.com/merch and get a great shirt like that where you can get an apology from Virtue with the crying face on it that says, I'm sorry. Aaron, super chat came in.
All right. So Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Says, no, Walt, Slapjack is still the worst name. Slapjack. We should do a poll, the worst recent name change in WWE history between Slapjack, T-Bar, Gunther, and
Butch.
Yeah.
Slap nuts greater than Slapjack.
Gunther is the worst
one.
Shorty G was another bad one.
Unbelievable. That's it, though, folks. We got through this over an hour and a half. Rest in Pete, Scott Hall, and rest in Pete. Did I just say rest in Pete? Rest in Pete, Pete Dunne. Rest in peace, Scott Hall and Stone Cold. We'll see you at WrestleMania. For Nico, for San, for Jargo, and Aaron. One came
Not yet. Johnny Boy sent in a $5 super chat. Says, hey, yo. Would you have Cody's show up at WrestleMania or Chicago? I'd have him show up in Chicago. You want to get
I think he gets booed if he shows up in Chicago, though.
I agree.
don't. I think he gets cheered.
I guarantee you, as soon as he walks to that curtain, we start to see him punk chant.
Yeah, the people already in Jacksonville, they were cheering for him all night.
I'll believe it when I see it with Cody.
No, look, and I like Cody, but I'm telling you right now, if he shows up in Chicago, they start chanting CM Punk.
You never know what's going to happen.
I think he gets cheered, but yes, I think he should be in Chicago. He could show up at WrestleMania. He could show up after WrestleMania. If he does show up, we knew it all along. We just did not want to spoil you guys. And if he doesn't show up, well, plans change. And that's
Seth Rollins versus Hornswoggle, WrestleMania. After what went down on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, that's the match I want to see. Hornswoggle versus Seth freaking Rollins.
Yeah,
the Magic Stardust doing this with the Dallas WrestleMania logo. That's all I'm going to say. We'll talk again next week. For Aaron, for Nico, for San, and Jargo, I am Virtue. Thanks for watching the No DQ review number 179. We'll see you next time.